It is August the 26th, 2021 at 9:44 a.m. here locally. I just returned moments ago from a very long morning walk, and I could not find a place that I wanted to sit down and record this with video live, mostly because it's getting so darn hot, so darn fast, that the few places that I found that I could sit, and I did want to sit so that I could stabilize the video, were not shaded, or they were next to lots of noise, mostly vehicle noise. So I decided instead to walk down the street and record the video and then marry it with the separate audio recording that I'm doing now. This is 1HP's DiaryCast number 2, and I'm calling it The Architects of Reality. I've been taking notes throughout the week because so much information has come my way this week that I wanted to capture, let's say, title headings so that I could go back and figure out what would be the most interesting thing to talk about in a short period of time. And what I discovered is that there was a thread between them all. And I'll just read you the titles: Architects of Reality, Perspective, Linear View, Dark and Light Working Together, Cosmic Egg, The Process of Evolving, and Adam and Eve, Creating a New World. The common thread between and amongst them all is that we are creating our life experience not simply through our deeds and actions and plans and goals, which is part of it, but simple fleeting thoughts, wishes, desires, and not necessarily the ones you might think of, the ones that you fester on and think about with regularity and intensity. Sometimes they're just fleeting thoughts. And when you are able to identify some of them by looking back over your life, you recognize that you have been creating your reality all along in ways that take nothing more than that thought. So mind your thoughts. And the reason I'm aware of it, and the reason that kind of was the common thread, was that various information has come to me confirming through usage of words and concepts and things that literally relate specifically back to things I've done myself, to show me that it's almost like I graduated or I'm at the end of a cycle. And in that process, I looked back and I realized that there are so many things that I had forgotten about in my entire life. I started to write those down then. As I was out walking, I was making notations, but I realized there were so many, dozens and dozens of them, that I thought I would just try to focus on the ones that came from a pure, mere, fleeting thought and show you the magnitude of those realizations so that you could potentially see how you too are doing exactly this. Whether you're aware of it or not, you're still doing it. Let's start in approximately 1986 to 87. I moved to New York City in April of 1987, and I used to watch this program, I think it was on Thursday nights, called The Days and Nights of Molly Dodd. And although the program itself was interesting, and I didn't always watch it to the end, it was the introduction every week that pulled me in like a magnet. And it was the music, it was the scenes, it was the expressions on her face, because I felt kind of eclectic like she was. And I always thought while I watched that, gosh, I wish I lived there. I wish I lived like that. And the funny thing is, less than 2 months later, I actually was living in New York City. Not only was I living in New York City, out of the blue, because of contrast, really heavy challenges I was facing at that time that put me in a position where I ultimately had to choose to get another job, and I wanted to move, and I found that a girl I'd worked with at one time lived in New York now. So I checked in Chicago and New York to see where I could get a job as a paralegal the quickest, and I found that New York was a good option. So I flew to New York, and 2 days later I had 2 job offers, and 2 weeks later I actually lived there. This is where it's interesting. I had an apartment that I had already signed up for, but it would not be ready for 3 months. It was part of a building that was completing, and I would be able to move in about 3 months. So I had to find housing until then. I stayed in an interesting hotel about 3 or 4 city blocks from Park and 45th, where I worked for Rogers and Wells at that time. And in that first few weeks, one of the young male associates was offered an opportunity to go to the California office of Rogers and Wells for the summer. And he had heard that, I was a new hire from out of town, and he approached me and asked me if I might be interested in subletting his shared apartment for the rest of the summer. And I was thrilled because the timing would be ideal. I could smoothly slide in to my new place and not have to find any more housing. So I took it, and it was on 116th Street, just off of Broadway, between Broadway and Riverside Avenue, across the street from Columbia University. And about 4 or 5 large city blocks from there was a restaurant that was featured every week in this introductory scene where the character Molly Dodd, was sitting having food, a meal or coffee or something with her girlfriend. And I didn't even realize it for a while, but eventually I recognized the place. I kept thinking, oh, that looks like. And then one day it was like, oh my God, that is that place. So here we are, me having this fleeting thought while watching a program that I wish that I could live there. I wish I could have that life. And sure enough, within a few short weeks, not only was I living there, but life had arranged itself in such a way that I was living a few blocks from this restaurant. Now let's fast forward another year to the spring of 1988. I had met someone who eventually became my husband, and we'd been going out for about 6 months at that point. We met on 11/11/87, if you can believe that. So he wanted to drive out to Long Island and check out a college that had a similar study area that was in the field of agriculture, and he had taken 3 or 4 years to get his degree in Egypt in the area of agricultural engineering. So he just wanted to drive out there and check out the campus and see if this was something he might want to pursue. We drove out there, and while we were on this road that's kind of on the side of the campus, we'd gone off of the Long Island Expressway out into the beautiful Long Island community. And I remember thinking, just in my head, boy, I wish that I could live out here someday. And I felt it deeply. I didn't say it out loud, and it was gone as quickly as it came. Now fast forward to 1998, 10 years later. After a year of exhaustive searching, my son and I had gone from Beacon, New York, up on a giant hill out there, to the suburbs of New Jersey and various other places, and now out to Long Island looking for an older Victorian home. And sure enough, we found one a half a mile from this location. The funny thing is, I didn't even realize that the house that my son and I had both fallen in love with was a half a mile away from this for 10 more years, in about 2008. I just happened to be driving down that road, and all of a sudden I got this deja vu. Such a heavy-duty deja vu that I had to pull off to the side of the road for a minute to kind of go, blah, 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 and ask myself, is this really happening? because I realized I was at that exact same spot where I had that wish or that thought. And here I'd lived there for 10 years already, driven that road numerous, hundreds and maybe even thousands of times. It's only half a mile from my house. And I never recognized it. So it must have been the time of year, the time of day, the weather conditions. I don't know. Something just sparked that memory at that moment. And I realized that, in fact, what I had thought happened a half a mile from that same place where I had the thought, boy, I wish I lived out here one day. So now let's forward a little bit further. I left the law firm environment and began a club or a professional association for real estate investors in the early 2000s. And around 2008-ish, a series of major contrasts came into my experience that helped me achieve something that I had been desiring for years, but it was never more than just a quick thought in my mind, which was, I wish that I had a quieter life. My club, this business, got so popular so quickly, and I ran it by myself the entire time because any efforts that I made to find reliable, employees or freelancers to work with me, none of them worked out. So I always ended up doing it myself. So I worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week minimum, and sometimes 16 or more, lining up the guests, doing all the work that's associated with running a club of this magnitude. So that I can cut to the chase, I used to cry a lot because it was so much pressure and so much intensity without relief. I didn't take vacations that whole time or do anything for myself because there was always something else to do. And any free time I had, I used it to do something supportive for my son, running him around to his activities or whatever needed to be done along those lines. It was always for my son because I felt he deserved that. So as much as I enjoyed the club and the process, I didn't want to let any of them down, and I knew there wasn't an easy way for me to stop running the club because some of those people had paid in advance for a year's membership. So there was no easy way to walk away without letting all these people down. But I knew that emotionally and physically and health-wise, it just was draining me. I knew I couldn't keep it up forever, but I never had enough time to do more than just think or wish for a quieter life. Well, this series of circumstances occurred, which was traumatic at the time, but ultimately led to my selling the club and attaining this quieter life. So I got it, but I got it through much contrast. Now fast forward, again, so much happens in between, I'm just leaving that to you. Now fast forward to June of 2015. It was the second year of my doing a 6-month house-sitting gig in Tucson, Arizona. I'd only been there a couple of weeks since the end of May. I was going to be there till about the 11th of December, I think is the day I left. And I'm swimming in the pool, face up, just floating. And I'm thinking, I feel bored. I loved this last year, and I love it now. I love the opportunity to get away again by myself for so long. But I'm bored. What am I going to do for the next 6 months to make it exciting the second time around? And so I basically called out in thought and said, I'm ready for more. I'm inviting more. Again, no words spoken, just thoughts. And by mid-August, I had one of the most profound spiritual experiences of my life, and I talk about it a lot, where I was introduced to something I now refer to as the Oliver frequency. And that led to the present day, where I have been on this journey of more, looking for the more of things, creating a new world that I actually live in now. So fast forward from June of 2015 to early 2017. And I meet someone, Maria introduced to a one-time friend, and we began talking about these unique and unusual experiences that I have, and my feeling I was being called to create a new world, but I didn't know what that meant, what it looked like, how to do it. I mean, I kind of made too big of a deal out of it. And now, though, through my journey of, let's say, going from low frequencies to high and spending time at each one with intent, experientially, as planned experiments, I literally would do things, try to step into the empathetic feeling of others that I was looking at around me to experience different emotions, which I felt were at different frequencies, so that I could stay there long enough to see what I would attract. And I went on this roller coaster ride of highs and lows, none of them negative for me, but the things that I experienced and the paths that I followed led me to where I am now. So that floating in the pool had a huge impact on and changed my life forever. Unfortunately, that friend who was going to go on this journey with me to create a new world and really was the catalyst for my starting the OneHiraethProject website and exploring the new, trying to figure out what this new world was and tripping into it by chance, just literally through opening myself up more and more. He became the equivalent of distant and silent and has been since August of 2018, and we don't talk at all. But that's the way it was supposed to be. It brought me what I needed to begin the journey. So now the call comes again. I live a quieter life. I live in that new world. And I have been exploring the more as I evolve into this place that I kind of exist of neutrality, where it's extremely active while nothing is really moving around me. All the movement is energetic, waveform. I feel vibration. I have been in places where literally my body starts to hum, sometimes all over, sometimes in various places, and I've learned to understand what that means, what connection I'm tapping into at these various points. It's all been this amazing learning experience. And with these insights that have come in the last week alone, what I've come to understand is that it was saying, it's time to wrap it up. You've completed that part of the journey. Now what? And I guess next week when I do DiaryCast number 3, we'll see if I've come up with any ideas or if they have found me.